Broadcasting from Oklahoma, the tornado capital of the world, home of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the University of Oklahoma Sooners. This is the Curated Experience Show, a weekly podcast about the customer experience with viewpoints you will not hear anywhere else. And now your host, author, and customer experience expert, Amos Tanuma.
Welcome to the Curated Experience. I am your host, Amos Tanuma.
I've got Bob Furness, my partner in crime, with me. Bob, are you still with me?
I am still here, sir.
Awesome. We are having our usual Friday conversations, which is a great end to my week. And I hope for our listeners, whenever you listen to this, hopefully this brings you some education and some humor as well. So glad to be talking with you again, Bob. Let's dive in. So today I want to talk a little bit about contact centers and makeovers. And this really came to me because there was I think I was on Twitter and I saw some contact center one makeover, and then I was reading through the details, and it was hilarious. So let me set the stage. The contact center has a stereotype. Did you ever see that there was a show about a contact center in India like 10, 12 years ago? Did you ever watch that?
I watched every single episode, dude. I think it was early. It was either early Netflix or early Prime on Amazon. I watched it.
It was hilarious.
If I remember correctly, I binged it. So.
Oh yeah. See,
yeah.
I watched it on television. So maybe you watched it years later. I was DVRing that thing when it came out. It was on one of the networks. But so I'm glad you did. I didn't know you saw it too, because it didn't get a lot of play. But if you think about the stereotype of the typical contact center or call center then when this show was on, it's generally employees who are not, can we say, exuberant, repetitive work. It's a surveillance system. The pay is not that great. Stop me when I get to any kind of good news. And I'm painting it all with a broad brush. But if you think about the reputations of call centers then and contact centers now, yes, there are some positive things, but I think you will agree that the typical contact center comes with a lot of negative stereotypes.
Yeah, and it does that because of shows. By the way, the name of that show was called Outsourced. Google just told me it was from 2010.
Yep.
So,
yep. 10 years ago. Wow.
It is those kind of shows. The counter of that is where we are now showing that contact centers in commercials are part of the brand. Geico does that. State Farm does that.
Discover does that, right?
Discover does that. Discover probably does it more positively than anyone else. So the contrast of those is probably the contrast between, maybe 30% of the contact centers and the other 70 where you can build a career, you can build a job structure, you can come into the organization and do good work and become a supervisor and become a trainer and become a leader. And I know that because I did it.
Right. Same here.
So, but you're right. The stereotypical call center is grossly underpaid. What's also interesting about that scenario of the reality versus the reality is when you talk as a consultant, you talk to customers, what you will hear about 80% of the time is, well, we're not really a contact center. We're really different. Or we're really something else.
Right.
And the reality is there are different ways to run a contact center.
Correct.
Right? You can define it different ways, but I've been in some really, really professional contact centers where I'll mention the name. Delta Faucets had a contact center somewhere in the north. It was really, really cold. I just remember that. I don't remember where it was. But, they had a lady that had been in that contact center for 20 years.
Wow.
And so she had made a career out of being the expert about Delta Faucets. So there are people like us, like many of the people listening, who are now supervisors that have probably been in their roles in that contact center probably somewhere from 3 to 5 years. And they may be at the point where they're trying to think, is this something I really want to do? Do I want to go somewhere else? What do I want to do? Which I think we all get around the 3 to 5 year itch around what does a job look like?
Right.
But there is an industry around this that says you can decide to be in the vendor side of a call center world. And having worked in a call center, go to work for NICE or Verint or somebody who is selling products into the contact center. You can go into the contact center and decide to go into consulting around contact centers. You could decide to go down the Salesforce path and become an admin. And so there's a lot of opportunity, but you're right. The stereotypical call center has a bad rap.
Yeah, and to that point, let's drill in a little bit. You talked about, and you mentioned named on the positives, but let's do the anatomy of where some of these bad stereotypes come from, right? So I'll tell you about, like, if I think about some of the worst contact centers and call centers back in the day that I've been inside or worked in, if I think about the things that make them that way, it's one, the organization. I know its leaders haven't seen the strategic value of the contact center. And so they vote with their wallets in terms of how it's funded. They vote in terms of how they view the employees. And it's very obvious, right? It's an unnecessary cost that needs to be shrunken down to zero, right? Like I would avoid this whole thing if I can. And the environments are very, very over surveillance, if you will, over surveilled, if you will, right? So there's monitoring of everything. I mean, the contact center measures everything anyway, but it's like the environment just screams, right? I don't trust you, right? Physically, I got to be seeing you, and then with systems, I'm tracking everything, and it's all about metrics. And you get down that road, and it's like, for me, the moment was, there is I'm sure you can actually find it. There is a review on Glassdoor, and I'm not going to mention the names, but where the rep, who's still working there, by the way, said some variation of, I bet prisoners have more freedom than we do. Like, it's like, it was heartbreaking almost, right? So those are things that I think usually make up these negative stereotypes. And in this case, it's prevalent enough, at least it used to be, to the point that when I walk into a contact center, my expectations, even till this day, tends to be really, 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 really low. And I think it'll be good if you can talk through the items, the anatomy, the list of things, so that if you're listening to this, okay, if you're doing these things, this is why your shop may be falling on the negative side of perceptions of working in a contact center.
Well, I think you ran through a word there that is probably the core of poor contact centers, and that is the trust factor. Do you trust your employees to do the right thing? Do you give them the right tools, the right training, the right coaching to trust them to do the right thing? It reminds me, we make 90% of the rules to deal with 10% of the employees, but we enforce them on 100% of the employees. So it reminds me of a story about my son. back, this was, let's see, he's in his mid 30s, 34-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. So he was probably a sophomore in high school. So this was probably 10 years ago,
Right.
somewhere in that neighborhood. And phones were out. I worked for Bell South Mobility, so getting a phone was an easy thing. So he was one of the first kids to have a flip phone, right? And to chase a rabbit, he could text you on his flip phone inside his pocket, and like back when you had to hit AAA to get a C to work,
Right.
So he was well versed. He was one of the first kids with a phone. So of course the school has a rule you can't have a phone. So what do we do? I say, look, this was not too long after 9/11, or right in that area, and it was like you take the phone, you leave it in your pocket, you don't take it out, and because I want to know where you are, I want you to be safe. So I text him midday and tell him to call me when he gets a chance. So he goes in, my fault, not his.
Right.
So he goes in the bathroom, goes into the cell, dials his dad, talks to his dad, comes out of the bathroom stall. Coach is standing there and takes his phone. Right. So now, as a parent, you had to go up and get the phone in order for him to get the phone back. So I go up and get the phone. He follows me to the car. I hand him the phone back, and I tell him, "Don't take the phone out again. I won't text you anymore." So first of all, I'm not a rule believer, because I believe that the 100% rule was made for the 10% of kids who would abuse the rule,
Right.
if they let everybody have a phone. So it's an example of, there are legitimate reasons for my kid to have a phone at school. Enforce the rule that he's not going to mess with it, that he's not going to text, that make the rule something that fits the reality. So back to the call center world, do you have the rule? Is the rule about checking out for lunch, punching out for lunch no later than 5 minutes after your assigned schedule? Is that because it's easier on you from a WFM perspective, from a workforce management perspective? Is that because you had a bunch of people that were checking out early? Is that because you had a bunch of people that were checking out late? Is it because because it's easier to just make a rule and then abide by it? Like, consider why you have the rule. I think that we have way too many rules in contact centers. And again, what is invariably the answer is, well, if you don't have the rule, then you'll have chaos. Not true.
No.
If you don't have the rule, 10% of the people will do the wrong thing, and you have to deal with them. And that makes you uncomfortable, probably, right?
Right.
Because the agent says, well, there's no rule against that. Well, you're a human being, and you're an adult in an adult job. You should know better that you can't take a 45-minute lunch on a 25-minute schedule. So trust matters. The other things that come into play really tie back to that, but coaching for the sake of making an employee a better employee, not for the sake of catching them doing something wrong. How much of our quality management process is about validation or our certification that we're doing the minimum level of okay? Is your quality management form all subjective? And because somebody in the room, when I ask that question, is going to go, well, you have to be able to give them a score. Yeah, but does it have to be subjective? Because 85% of what they do on the phone call is not. I'm sorry, is not. It is subjective. It's not objective.
Right.
So you got, if you've got yes, no. Well, what if there's a maybe? If you got 1 to 10, well, what if it's really, they did really good in one area and not in another? I love, my answer to this is, if you really want to spend a couple of weeks making your quality management about making employees better, get rid of the form, not forever. I realize you got to have a form. I didn't mean to make you so nervous. Calm down. Calm down.
Get rid of the form. Blasphemy.
Get rid of the form. Take out a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of it and sit down with an employee, listen to a call and say, here's all the things that you did really well. And here's all the places that we think you could get better. And ask them, so what do you think you did well? And write it down. And then share with them what your thoughts are. And then on the right side, what do you think you could have done differently after we listen to the call together? So here's some things I think you could have done different. And then if a score just is part of your culture, ask them, what kind of score do you think you should get? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate that call? Well, it was an 80. Okay, well, I would have given you an 85. I would have given you a 90. So now we're correlating what reality might be around quality. So are you coaching for the sake of improving quality, or are you quality monitoring for the sake of validating numbers and metrics? So those are the two that come to mind immediately. Is that
man?
I just think that it becomes down to trust and the relationship with their supervisor.
Right.
That's where if I fix those two things,
right,
it covers up the fact that they're not getting paid as much as they should. Now, you still got to do something about that. You still got to work with your management to explain why you can't be the lowest paying job in the marketplace. And
right.
You know who has brought that standard up a little bit is they get a lot of negative pub, but the local McDonald's is paying $15-16 an hour now.
Yeah.
So you can't pay less than that.
Listen. I used to, and I'm ashamed to admit this, I used to manage a contact center. This is in 2003, and there was a McDonald's that we sort of shared a parking lot with, and it was an outsourced shop, and my reps will quit and go make less at McDonald's, right? So of course I'll go eat at the McDonald's, and I would run into them, and I would take it personally, right? I was like, wait a second, like you would, and Bob, that's the thing, right? Like, and when I would talk to them, what they would say is that, yeah, it's the job, right? Like it was like, yes. Oh, by the way, the pay wasn't great. So we were fairly comparable with McDonald's, but McDonald's was slightly less, a quarter or something like that. But they would go like, yeah, I want to go do that. So I like that McDonald's is raising the bar and companies like that in terms of pay. I think that forces us as an industry to catch up. But the thing I love most about what you said was that a lot of what you just said, guys, if you're listening to this, you don't have to spend a penny. You still have to figure out how to justify and bring more resources there, but you don't have to spend a penny to change those things. And in my case, back then, however many years ago that was, if I made the environment, or if I could have made some of those changes, then despite the fact that the pay wasn't where it needed to be, they felt better, and they would have had more sort of pride in their job.
Well, and I'm still amazed when I walk into contact centers in today's world with all the noise that's in. I mean, the ICMI, contact center pipeline, CCNG, all of the conferences that are out there, and all the opportunity for you to learn as a contact center leader. That you walk into a call center and they're still giving us a scorecard on average handle time at the agent level.
Right.
So you need to look at your metrics also. Are your metrics driving the right behaviors that you want to be driven?
Yep.
Because not that I ever did this when I worked in a contact center as an agent, but you can unplug your headset just a little bit, and you can go hello, and hang up on the person. On the quality management side of it, it sounds like there was something wrong with the phone, right? So I can hang up on 10 people 1 an hour, 8 people 1 an hour, and decrease my average handle time and my average number of interactions easily. So not that I would ever do it. I just know it's possible, right? uh, so are you driving? Are you building out metrics that drive the right behavior? And by the way, I just want to come back. I said 30%. I don't even know that it's 30% of the contact centers. I think contact center jobs have become much more professional than they used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I started out in a world where we were in a unionized call center, and it took three Form 5s to get a Form 6, and 3 Form 6s for you to get fired. Right. So writing somebody up was part of the culture, because that's just part of the culture. I don't see that today. I see people trying to build professional level, customer experience focused, and in many cases agent focused,
right,
employee focused environments. So it's the tweaking at this point. When you get to that point, when you're an insurance company, you're paying good wages, you have good benefits, you really don't have a traditional tactical contact center agent. What you have is a customer service specialist that's supporting the customer. That's when these little nuances make a difference.
I agree.
That's when things like coaching and trust and those things come into play.
I agree. What I would love you to leave us with is, and I'm if you're just joining, this is the Curated Experience with Bob Furness and Amos Tanuma, and lots of really good nuggets are here. But Bob, what I would love for you to leave us with is, if I'm listening to this and I'm trying to figure out where to start, outside of doing surveys, how do I get to the heart of my employees feel this way? They feel insert things here. They feel like you don't trust me, on and on and on. What are some techniques that would help me as a leader in this contact center to get specifics from these folks, right? Because as you know, they do these company surveys and the contact center feedback gets buried in there. How can I get to the meat of, hey, Mr. Manager, Supervisor, whatever, these are the things you're doing specifically that makes me feel in these negative ways that contributes to this? Because I think the start of the makeover is figuring out what the issue is, right? Like what do you struggle with?
Yeah, the tough part about what you asked was you eliminated the way that I would have gone, and you probably knew that's the reason why you eliminated surveys, because that was way too easy. But we'll go back to the trust factor. You've got to build a personal relationship with people before they share personal struggles. So how do you know that employee? What do you know about that employee? And we talked a couple of weeks ago about COVID issues and this need to get closer to the people. There's never a better time for you to just pick up the phone and say, how are you doing? How's things? Now, it may freak them out if you've never been that person, right?
Right.
If you ask how their kids are doing and you've been their manager for 6 months or a year, and you go, how are your kids? They may go, well, why do you care?
Which is a sign, right? But you got to start somewhere.
Which is a sign. But what, to answer your question directly, it's really about having conversations. I mean, you can hire somebody like me or you to come in, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to sit down with your employees. We're going to have employee sessions. We're going to call your employee today's. We're going to say, so tell us what's broken. Tell us what you think. Tell me how I can help make your job better. It's weird that 30-something years later, it's still the same question. It's, what can I do to make your job better? But then it's doing something about that. If 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 there's not enough microwaves in the break room, then put some more microwaves in the break room. If I haven't seen my supervisor in 3 days or 3 weeks, make sure your supervisors are available to your agents and take away whatever it is. I mean, I went through an exercise in our contact center where we did, I had my 10 supervisors in the room, and I said, tell me everything that you do. And it became the list of 80 because we came up with 80 things that they did. And then we said, okay, let's prioritize these 80. And so we got down to the prioritization to about 50. And then we said, okay, how long does it take you to do these last 10? And let's say, I don't remember specifically, but let's say it was 5 hours every week. Okay, well, we're just going to stop doing that. We're not going to do these reports anymore. We're going to stop this. You got 5 hours you got to go spend with your employees. Because you just told me that I was taking up 5 hours of your time by having you do this. So pushing your supervisors back into the role of knowing what their people need and what they do, and then listening to your supervisors. So it's not, unfortunately, man, it's not rocket science. It's
there's no
magic bullet.
Yeah, no easy button.
There's no technology that makes it better. and that's what I do for a living is implement technology. But that's the reason why I love talking to you is because, and to this audience is because it really is about the simple things. And some of those things as a supervisor 25 years ago, I did because it was who I was as a person.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was doing right because I hadn't been to ICMI and I hadn't read the books. But today you can go to Contact Center Pipeline and sign up for a digital version. Yeah. You can learn and learn how to be a better employee, a better leader in a contact center today in ways that wasn't available 25 years ago.
Yeah, and the beauty of a lot of what you said that brings me joy is that you didn't talk about contact center transformation. Like people hear makeover, like we got to get all this ROI, millions of dollars. No. What we're talking about here, folks, are things that are, a lot of them are in your control as sort of a management team of things you can start to do. Not that you shouldn't move the big rocks, but these are places to start so that we can begin to really, really change the conversation around what the prototypical contact center is.
Yeah, and if you're a manager, you have the ability to affect the supervisors who report to you. And if you're a supervisor, challenge your manager. Challenge your manager to go, you know what, I think I was on this podcast and there was this guy and he said that we do a lot of things we shouldn't be doing. Can we have a session like he talked about? Can we get in a room and talk about all the things we do and see if we can figure out what we can stop doing? Because I would really like to spend more time on the floor. I bet you money that he or she will say, sure, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. Bob, this was awesome, and thanks for spending part of your Friday with us and for the audience. I can't wait to post this one live, and Bob's info and mine will be there. We'll put it on the Facebook group as well. We'll love your feedback and input and whatever else you guys want us to cover in the show. Bob, have a great weekend. Look forward to chatting next week.
You too, Amos. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
And until next time, remember, the experience is either random or intentionally curated. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to The Curated Experience with Amos Tanuma. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll join the conversation online by visiting us at curatedcx.com or at amostanuma.com. That's curatedcx.com or AMASTENUMAH.com. And please invite your friends and colleagues to visit our website or iTunes where they can check this and previous podcasts. This has been a Bien LLC production. Check us next time for another edition of The Curated Experience.